Here comes the sun, doo 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 doo. Here comes the sun, and I say, it's nighttime. And why are all the street lights off? Ah! Blackout! Jeez. Wait, what was I singing about again? What is up, everybody? Random Man here, bringing you my review for Yesterday. Now, the plot of this jukebox musical romantic comedy basically follows Jack Malik, played by Himesh Patel, a struggling musician who, after having an accident during a worldwide 12-second blackout, finds himself as the only person who remembers the Beatles and decides to take credit for writing and performing their famous songs. Going into this movie, I was really looking forward to it. It had a unique concept that got me hooked immediately for it featuring the songs of the Fab Four themselves, the Beatles. I love this band. Who doesn't? I think it should be illegal if you do not at least like a few of their hit songs. I don't think I know anybody who doesn't like at least a few of their famous songs. So with all of that, even the supporting cast got me interested to see this film along with the writer and director. This film is written by Richard Curtis, who is responsible for bringing us some of the most charmingly British properties out there, such as Mr. Bean, which he co-created with its star Rowan Atkinson. I've always loved it since I was a kid. And he's also brought us films such as the modern holiday classic Love Actually, and then this film is directed by Danny Boyle. Some of his films in the past I have quite enjoyed. Slumdog Millionaire, which he won the Best Director Oscar for, and it won a slew of other Oscars, including Best Picture, I find overrated, but I still enjoy that film. And he's also brought us the recent Steve Jobs biopic starring Michael Fassbender, which I really enjoyed as well. Simply put, these talented people coming together made me anticipate this film. Starting out with the cast and their performances, we have Himesh Patel as Jack Malik. Now, I've never seen this guy act in anything prior to this film. This is also his first major role in a movie, and what a breakout turn he has made for himself. He really effectively pulled off the struggling singer-songwriter archetype, then with the fortune/misfortune of him getting hit by a bus during a blackout has him being the only person to remember the Beatles. He really does feel like somebody who is looking for opportunity, though even with the sign of giving up and having this literal sign of him maybe possibly doing something great, he takes it. And I think that this guy really has a future ahead of him when it comes to other acting projects. And since he does take credit for these Beatles songs, he also is quite an outstanding performer. Also strong in this film is Lily James as the longtime best friend and manager to Jack, Ellie. Now, I've come to really love Lily James over the years. Whether it was her title role in the live-action Disney remake of Cinderella or her turn in Baby Driver, my favorite movie of 2017, and it's also a film that is literally driven by music, James has become such an impressive performer. And here, with her natural good looks and charm, she is so adorable and cute in this film. And the chemistry between herself and Patel, I thought, was quite believable as well. Other members of the supporting cast include the likes of Kate McKinnon, who plays the eventual agent to Jack once he becomes famous for using these Beatles songs to bolster him to more attention. Kate McKinnon is a performer I do love on Saturday Night Live. I think she is hilarious on SNL. But when it comes to her in movies, I always found her really back and forth in terms of her delivery and the characters that she is playing, like whether it was her turn in the 2016 Ghostbusters film or here. I really didn't think that she added anything. I don't know, something about her style of acting feels like it was more suited for the live sketch show as opposed to feature films. There's also Ed Sheeran as himself. He is not just an extended cameo to back up this movie taking place within the music industry and it being a commentary on it. No, this is a full-fledged supporting role, and the only acting I've seen him do outside of this film was when he popped up in that one Game of Thrones episode, but of course he has a lot more to do here, and I thought he was quite good. Then I also have to give a shout out to Joel Fry as Rocky. He stole a lot of moments. So the cast here, with the exception of Kate McKinnon, I thought did solid jobs, especially Himesh Patel and Lily James. The writing of this film, which was done again by Richard Curtis, really brought a concept that made me gravitate towards it. It does make for something that is really engaging right off the bat, as we see Jack in the beginning of the movie really not making much of himself in terms of becoming a musician. He's playing at really small gigs, which are usually birthday parties or small outdoor gatherings, and then when this blackout comes and he falls flat on his face, knocking out 2 teeth in the process, he later performs the title Beatles song for his friends once he's out of the hospital, and then the rest of the events of this movie get underway. It does create for a lot of comedy, and I've got to say that this movie is pretty hysterical when it comes to the humor involving Malik being the only person who remembers the Beatles, him looking up on the internet to see if he can find any trace of them left. But at the same time, though, the way this movie does play out, and it's playing with the supposed rules that aren't that well established in this film, it creates for something that progressively is illogical in its construction. That's easily the biggest issue I have with this film, because though this movie does have a pretty simple concept and it does run with it, it doesn't go that deep, and also trying to establish the confines in which all of this does occur. It becomes more apparent later on in the film when more factors are introduced in trying to build up more of this universe, which I cannot give away due to spoilers, but as the movie does keep going on, it doesn't really make for something that is that focused aside from this movie's main intention in being a jukebox musical featuring a bunch of famous hits for the Beatles, and it's pretty clear that those behind this film spent a pretty penny for the rights to these songs to be used by Himesh Patel himself to perform them. As I said, he is quite a strong performer, and I just got a kick out of seeing and hearing these songs being performed in a movie theater setting. Going back into some of the writing, though, especially in connection with the directing by Danny Boyle, it felt more like a Richard Curtis film than it did a Danny Boyle film, what with the script having such a unique concept and that great of a voice that it overpowered the rest of the big filmmaking aspects, specifically with the direction by Boyle, as you could have fooled me into saying that, oh, this movie was directed by Richard Curtis and not Danny Boyle, as the way Boyle directs here, it did feel more than competently done for the sake of the narrative moving along, at least in terms of how Curtis's script is written as is. Only occasionally with some of the filmmaking did I notice some sense of style inserted in between, like with the use of slanted Dutch angles, with walking and talking scenes, which I felt were at a place with the rest of the movie being mostly stably shot with its cinematography, as the handheld feel of the Dutch angles being used in some moments I thought didn't fit with the film. Luckily, that only happened a few times, and the rest of it felt more homogeneously put together. That goes for the editing too, and the way the movie is strung together, in it being consistent with scene transitions and the overall flair that the movie was going for, and also in the way it was paced too. It runs at a little under 2 hours, though I never felt myself bored at any moment, because in between a lot of the sequences of the film where we have downtime, we get to hear and see a lot of the Beatles songs being performed. Again, who doesn't love the Beatles here? And hearing some of the songs covered by Himesh Patel as Jack Malik really did amp up the enjoyment factor for me. And speaking of the music, the original score for this film by Daniel Pemberton did add in more ambient factors to the film when the Beatles music wasn't used, and several reprises of his score were used across the film to display some emotional moments, in particular between Jack and Ellie. So that also made it feel like a Richard Curtis film there, as with another one of his movies, specifically Love Actually, there are certain themes that do pop up here and there that make it feel like it was something that was going to push for a little bit of a heartwarming moment, or something that would make you feel a little bit choked up, that kind of thing. That's also why I feel like this movie felt more like a Curtis film than a Boyle one. So with what has been said so far, at least by my account, the writing of this film is both the biggest strength and biggest weakness with it, in terms of how this movie is in establishing itself and what is going on with this world after that blackout has taken place. This movie is also pretty clearly a social commentary on the music industry, specifically with going about the idea of what would happen if the Beatles songs were written today, and if they would be taken over by music executives, higher ups at record labels, any of that stuff. I found that aspect of the movie interesting as well. When everything is said and done, this movie just made me feel good by the time it ended. As I was walking out of the theater and I was going to meet up with my bro and mom for dinner at a nearby restaurant from the theater, I found myself humming some of the Beatles tunes, and I even listened to Here Comes the Sun on the way to the restaurant, as this movie, I think, for any big greatness that it does, it will introduce a new generation of people to the Beatles music. Most of my decently filled auditorium was filled with older people, but there were some younger people, maybe even slightly younger than me, to the front of me to my right, who went in to watch this film. So yeah, I do think that more people will be interested in the Beatles music if they haven't already been fans already. And I think that this is the biggest accomplishment of yesterday. For the faults that I do have with the writing in it hampering the narrative overall, it did make for something that, again, made me feel good by the time it ended. It made me have a jolly good time throughout its narrative. And with what it will do with audiences, I think it will become a crowd pleaser. If you aren't a fan of Richard Curtis's past works, this movie will not sway you in its favor. However, if you are a fan of the Beatles, and as I've mentioned before, how can you not be? Or if you're looking for something that will make you feel good by the time it is over, this is a movie that will be up your alley. I do think it is a perfect date movie as well. For all that I have said and more for this film, I recommend it. My final verdict for yesterday is 3.5 out of 5 stars. Thank you all, as always, for watching. Be sure to like this video, comment on what you thought of yesterday, social media links in the description, subscribe to my channel for more, and I'll catch you on the next movie review.